A circular saw in the mouth, bones resembling tree branches. A vacuum cleaner attached to the head. Yes, historical animals are just perfect for making science fiction and horror movies about them. It's amazing how nature could create something like this. In this episode, I will talk about strange, scary, and amazing monsters that once inhabited the planet. Hello, Pancake. Gigantopithecus. Can you imagine a creature twice as heavy as an adult male gorilla? Capable of breaking through the ceiling of an apartment with its head, it's that tall. And yet it chews bamboo like a panda. Here it is, the Gigantopithecus. The largest primate in the history of zoology. The size of the remains is so impressive that some enterprising individuals in China tried to sell Gigantopithecus teeth, passing them off as the fangs of a real dragon. Gigantopithecus presumably inhabited the karst caves of the southern regions of China. They were likely very intelligent. Well, by those standards, of course. Primitive stone tools were found in the caves near the remains. It would be difficult for a human to use them, but for a giant, quite feasible. Animal bone remains were also found there. However, they were mostly herbivores. Their diet included grains, nuts, and fruits. Why did Gigantopithecus go extinct? The most likely reason is starvation. This species evolved in the conditions of humid forests, where everything was clear and stable. But then the climate began to change. Many types of food became seasonal, especially fruits. And while other primates managed to switch to different food, Gigantopithecus preferred to simply eat less. And due to constant stress, their reproduction decreased significantly until they eventually went extinct. However, some believe that somewhere in the world, a couple of surviving Gigantopithecus might still be wandering. In the Himalayas, mountaineer Eric Shipton took photographs of footprints of a huge creature in the middle of the last century. They were published in the journal Nature. Scientists concluded that the tracks were left by a giant bipedal primate. You've probably heard of it. It's usually called the Yeti. Opabinia. It's hard to imagine a stranger creature. Scientists sometimes compare it to a vacuum cleaner, hinting at the flexible hose on its head that nature endowed this species with. At the end of this trunk, there was something resembling a claw with 5 spikes pointing forward and inward. Most likely, Opabinia used this thing to gather food and toss it into its mouth. Since there are no signs that it had any teeth, it most likely fed on something very small and soft. Opabinia is also distinguished from other species by its eyes, which resemble cones. A total of 5 of them. The central one looked upward, while the other 4 provided the creature with peripheral vision. Additionally, the entire body of Opabinia was divided into segments. On the sides were flaps, and this entire beauty ended with a fan-like tail. A magnificent creature, perfect for filming in fantasy movies. Despite such a rich appearance, nature did not equip Opabinia with truly good defense. The animals did not have mineralized armor or even a hard organic exoskeleton like other arthropods. Their bodies were flattened during burial and fossilization. Some features can only be inferred from the markings on the outlines of the fossils. It is not definitively known what lifestyle Opabinia led, whether it swam in the water column or crawled along the bottom, as its flexible segmented body does not rule out either possibility. Titanoboa. In the early 21st century, something resembling a fossilized branch was found in a coal mine in northern Colombia. However, researchers later realized that this was fundamentally mistaken. In front of them was a fragment of the jaw of a terrestrial animal from the Paleocene epoch. Nothing like it had been found in those areas before, and scientists got to work. A little later, a batch of fossils caught the attention of paleontologists, which someone had identified as a crocodile. New expeditions to the discovery sites proved that it was not a crocodile at all. It was a snake. And a very large one at that. In 2012, they were incredibly lucky. The skull of Titanoboa was found. This can be considered a real miracle, as snake skulls are fragile and usually disintegrate after death. This discovery allowed for an astonishing hypothesis to be made. Thanks to its size, Titanoboa could easily swallow a horse. But the snake's mouth had many palatal and lateral teeth. Modern snakes that feed on fish have a similar structure. So it's quite likely that Titanoboa primarily hunted in the water and was much slower and more cumbersome on land. Archelon was a turtle the size of a passenger car. Is that possible? The ancient Archelon was exactly like that. Its length and weight were roughly equal to a sedan. No modern turtle can boast such a size. Even the largest, the leatherback sea turtle listed in the Red Book, is half the size. By the way, among modern species, this turtle resembles Archelon the most. It also didn't have a shell in the usual sense of the word. Instead of a hard armor, it was covered with skin. Scientists know exactly what this ancient sea giant looked like because its skeletons are well preserved. There is a hypothesis that the turtle would bury itself in the silt and enter a kind of hibernation. It would surface every few hours to take a breath of air. By the way, one of the discovered Archelon skeletons is missing a rear flipper. Archaeologists suggested that these are traces of a battle, possibly with a prehistoric shark or a mosasaur. The enormous head of this amazing animal ended with a curved beak, similar to that of a bird. This was a perfect adaptation for hunting. Archelon fed on jellyfish, crustaceans, and ammonites. Archelon was first named and described in the late 19th century based on its remains. But sailors have often claimed to have seen such a huge turtle in the ocean, and it was even bigger than a car. However, they had no evidence to support this. So Archelon is considered to have gone extinct back in the Mesozoic era. Argentavis. If you need a master of the sky, then you found it. Argentavis is the largest bird that ever lived on Earth. Its wingspan was approximately 26 feet, 3 inches. That's too much to take off from the ground like a regular bird. Scientists studied the wing fragments and concluded that Argentavis used soaring flight. To do this, it had to jump from a suitable elevation, which, in itself, was difficult. Try finding a place where such a massive creature could push off easily. In the air, the bird would find warm air currents and could soar in them for hours without a single flap, like vultures or albatrosses. With such dimensions, the bird could have been dangerous for anyone. However, it is believed that it primarily fed on small animals. This is indicated by the structure of its skull. The Argentavis swallowed its food whole, which is much easier to do when you catch, for example, a rabbit. It hunted by diving from a height and grabbing its prey. It is believed that it could also pursue before attacking. Argentavis lived for a very long time, about 100 years. And they died of old age or diseases, not because someone decided to snack on tasty bird meat. Argentavis simply had no natural enemies. It might have fought only with its own kind. Megatherium. It's very simple. A very large sloth. Its name translates to huge beast. The largest representative of the species is considered to be the American Megatherium. It was the first to be discovered at the end of the 18th century. The naturalist zoologist Georges Cuvier then suggested that it, like modern sloths, lived in trees, although he quickly changed his mind. What kind of tree would it have to be to support the weight of this giant? After all, standing on its hind legs, it would be twice as tall as a modern brown bear. So, Megatherium was relocated to burrows. The giant sloth lived in the pampas of South America in arid and semi-arid regions. Like its descendant, it was a vegetarian. It preferred leaves, branches, and fruits of trees, although analyses of remains showed that sometimes some individuals tried to chew on grass. In fact, to reach higher branches, Megatherium would stand on its hind legs. But it walked on all fours. It went extinct in the late Pleistocene. The main reason was climate change, as with many other animals. However, this guy did manage to encounter humans. Extinction followed the first appearance of humans in North and South America. Sites have been found where this giant, sloth-like creature was caught and butchered. So, perhaps it wasn't just nature to blame for Megatherium's disappearance from the face of the earth. Entelodont. You definitely wouldn't want to feature this beast in cute calendars for the year of the pig. Entelodont is a real monster, an omnivorous pig the size of a bull. Its mouth was equipped with a full set of powerful teeth, large canines, strong incisors, and massive molars. Thanks to this impressive set, the beast got its name. In translation, it means perfect teeth. You could encounter this monster in the regions of present-day North America, Europe, and Asia. And such an encounter would not have brought you anything good. It was a dominant predator. And thanks to its size, it could easily hunt large herbivores, such as the Polybotherium camel, which itself was the size of a small deer. Such an animal was dangerous even on its own. However, based on the remains, scientists have determined that entelodonts lived in small family groups. A distinctive feature of these animals: large bony protrusions on the snout, on the sides. Because of this, the entelodont slightly resembles a warthog. They likely served as attachments for powerful jaw muscles. In males, the protrusions were significantly larger than in females. From this, it was concluded that size mattered. The protrusions played a role in determining the animal's place in the herd. And these were not peaceful families at all. On the skeletons of most entelodonts, scientists found traces of terrible wounds. Such marks could only have been left by the tusks of their kin. Most commonly found are fractured cheekbones, bite marks, and severe skull damage. And these are clearly traces of brutal fights over food or females. Helicoprion. A shark with a circular saw in its mouth is quite a sight, isn't it? Helicoprion is unlike anything else, right? Where else would you see a jaw in a single row, and twisted into a spiral? There are between 80 and 190 teeth in this spiral. Local historian Alexander Besanov found something at the end of the 19th century that resembled a mollusk shell but had serrated edges. Later, in St. Petersburg, geologist and paleontologist Krupinski figured out what it actually was. He didn't figure it out right away either. He determined how exactly this strange spiral was positioned and placed it on the upper jaw of the fish, so that it protruded like a nose. This version was adhered to for a very long time. Even in books from the 1960s, you can find such a snub-nosed creature. Why such difficulties with placement? Helicoprion was a cartilaginous fish, and the remains of such fish are preserved very poorly. Therefore, researchers end up with just the tooth spirals, without fragments of the fish's skull or skeleton. There were assumptions that during an attack, the Helicoprion would unfurl its spiral like a whip. Truly, it would have been a deadly weapon. Only recently, in the 21st century, were scientists able to reconstruct the structure of the Helicoprion's head and determine how the tooth spiral was positioned and functioned. Scientists believe these are pharyngeal teeth. That is, they were located inside the mouth and were not visible until the fish opened its mouth. And what could such a strange creature have eaten? It would seem anything. But the Helicoprion turned out to be quite a peaceful guy. Its mouth couldn't grind hard food. Therefore, the shark fed on soft-bodied squids and shrimps. Arthropleura. If you have insectophobia, quickly call someone who can hold your hand. Our next hero is a real nightmare for anyone who is afraid of insects. Arthropleura, or the giant millipede, inhabited the territories of modern Europe and North America. The arthropod, as long as a pike and weighing as much as an adult boar, was encased in solid armor. It was protected by a powerfully segmented chitinous shell, additionally covered with small spikes that increased the creature's defense. It also had 30 rounds of ammunition, pairs of legs. Surely, all researchers would be curious to see the skeleton of this creature in its entirety. But so far, it hasn't been found anywhere. Only fragments are found. The largest of these were just under 3 feet long. And they also discovered where the Arthropleura used to stroll in its leisure time. Numerous trackways of this millipede have been found in the USA, Canada, and Scotland. Most likely, this giant arthropod lived in swamps and humid forests. It crawled on the ground surface in search of food. However, it's hard to say exactly what it ate. A clear jaw imprint of the Arthropleura has yet to be discovered. Most likely because it was relatively small. By studying some fossils, researchers discovered spores of club mosses and ferns. So, there is a high probability that the terrifying arthropod was quite peaceful and herbivorous. However, specialists are not yet sure about the adult specimens. It might have occasionally snacked on small animals. Sarcosuchus. Are you scared of modern crocodiles? Now imagine a beast with a mouth the size of an adult human. That's what Sarcosuchus is. The terror of the floodplain river valleys of Africa and South America. With such size, it could afford any menu. And it did. Sarcosuchus was so dangerous and deadly that even dinosaurs feared it. If you dawdled at the watering hole, you'd be eaten. And that charming log over there would swallow you. The hunting method of Sarcosuchus is as old as time, lying in ambush and waiting for careless prey to serve itself up. In addition to land animals, Sarcosuchus could easily attack other crocodiles that were smaller in size. Its enormous jaws exerted a colossal pressure of 8 tons on its prey. And although this predator had no direct enemies on its back, Sarcosuchus had 2 rows of rectangular bony plates. Osteoderms. Most likely to prevent some enterprising larger relative from biting it in half. Looking at all these creatures, you are both amazed and delighted. Each one of them falls into the category of you couldn't make this up. But how fortunate it is that almost all of them, except for the giant sloth, disappeared from the face of the earth before Homo sapiens appeared.